Hi, John with eTrailer. If you have a motor coach like this and it has the Ford F-53 chassis and you're tired of fighting the steering going down the road, whether it's due to crosswinds or uneven pavement, then we've got a product today that's going to help with that. We're looking at Roadmaster's Exact Center steering stabilizer kit that we've installed on a 2015 Ford F-53 chassis. And one of the reasons I like this kit so much is it's truly a bolt-on kit, and you can get this done at home. This is an all-aluminum cylinder. It's made in the USA, and what it basically consists of, it's a high-pressure nitrogen cylinder that's going to tie in with your steering system and keep you going straight down the road, and it's going to eliminate the lane wander, like I said earlier. So if it, instead of having your coach start to wander and then you have to go to correct it, it's doing all the little stuff for you. This is a nice little kit, and Roadmaster makes great products. This is one of those things that you can get it done, and it has a lifetime warranty on it, and you can make adjustments with it going down the road with just a single wrench. Now, as far as installation goes, it does kind of depend on your chassis, whether or not you have the 19.5-inch wheels or the 22.5-inch wheels. The reason being, you have to remove two of the U-bolts off of your leaf spring suspension. The difference in torque when you go to reapply those is kind of big. So if you have the smaller wheels like we do on this coach today, it's not that big of a deal to torque those U-bolts back down. So before the installation here, what I've got is I have some layers of painter's tape on the dash and the steering wheel. What I'm going to do is try to get this up to speed, and we're going to find the true center point of our suspension and our steering components up in the front here. You can't always just rely on whether or not your steering wheel is straight. A lot of times, sure, that's great, but it may not be exact, and we're going to want to get as close as possible to the exact center as we can. So I'm going to get this rolling. The road needs to be as flat as you can be, and I've already got a line drawn on the dash, and I'm picking a point off in the distance that we're steering towards, and when I feel like the coach is moving in a straight direction, I'll just match that line with the steering wheel. Now when we go to park, before I turn the engine off, I'll make sure that these two are lined up, and we'll know that we have the center point of our steering components. Now that we have the center point marked and we know the center of our suspension and steering components, let's go ahead and get in the shop and make our improvements. So we've got our coach up in the air just to make it a little bit easier to show you what we're doing. But in all reality, the coach should be on the ground. You should have your tires on the ground. If you use your jacks to get up underneath of it to make it a little bit easier, that's okay, but it could throw the calibration of it left to right off a little bit. So once you get it installed, if you can get it back on the ground and then do your final adjustments, that's going to be your best bet. So we're going to start the install. This is going to be probably the hardest part about this installation, is we need to loosen up the two U-bolts on the leaf springs here. These are going to be 1 1/8, and we're going to be using a 1-inch impact today. These are usually torqued pretty high. Okay, now in your kit, you're going to have a bracket. They call this the chassis bracket. You're going to notice an oval hole in it. And so the way that this gets mounted up on the vehicle, you can see the tires over here. So it's going to be like this. So we have the U-bolt from here and here. Okay, we'll install it like that. And then you're going to want to retorque your U-bolt down to the factory specs. And you can find these specs online. Each coach is going to be a little bit different. It depends on the gross vehicle weight rating of the coach builder here and the chassis. Now you can grab what they're going to call the reflex tie rod bracket. It looks like this. So the 1/2-inch hole here is going to face towards the front of the coach. You want to grab that. You also want to grab U-bolt, and it's going to have, or it should have, two flat washers on it as well. Now you're going to need, your kit's going to come with two U-bolts, and we're going to need both of them, but we're going to leave them loose for right now. Basically, we're just going to set this up here, set that over, and kind of get this mocked into position for once we get the steering stabilizer up here. We don't know exactly where it's going to land yet, so we're just going to get the two U-bolts loosely installed. Now we can grab our stabilizer, and we're going to mount this up on the bolts. Let me show you here, at least on the chassis side here. So you're going to get two flat washers, a nylock nut, and a hex bolt on the spring side here. You're going to drop the bolt in, then you're going to take a flat washer. Basically, we want to sandwich the ends, the tie rod ends of these, with the bolts, okay? So I'm going to lift this up here, put the washer in, and then another washer to sandwich that in. And we're just going to finger tighten it right now just to hold it, okay? And then over here on the other side, it's a similar process, except we're going to go in through the bottom. Okay, so put the bolt in on the bottom side, and then a flat washer, and then we'll put the steering stabilizer, then another flat washer, and then the nylock nut. So by doing this, what it's going to end up doing here is keeping everything parallel. So you want the steering stabilizer as parallel as possible with the tie rod. So, and this is the setup that's going to do it. Now once you have this up here, from here you're just going to torque all the bolts, and you can find the torque specs in your instruction manual. I'm going to start with a 3/4 inch bolts, these bigger ones, and kind of snug them up first, this side and then the other side as well. And then we'll have a better idea of where this is going to land, and then we can tighten up these 9/16. So just the 3/4 inch bolts are tightening. As you can see, now you can kind of tell how this is going to sit, and kind of square it up on the tie rod. Make sure you have this as parallel as possible, and then we can snug this up. If your tie rod nuts here are loose, you want to tighten them down. Just make sure they're backed up against the end of the tie rod here on both sides. If you need to make adjustments in the future, if it's pulling one way or the other, this is where you could do it by removing this bolt and rotating this assembly out. Just put a wrench on here. I got a 22 millimeter that fits that. And then you can adjust it, fine-tune it left and right. So we should be close with the way that we had it mocked up in the parking lot with the tape and the steering wheel. But let's go see what kind of a difference this is going to make. Okay, so we're back out here. We have the stabilizer installed. Now I know that this is already off from where it should be. This is also why I don't peel the tape off right away. I'm going to let go of this, and you're going to see that my mark is off to the right and the coach is drifting off to the right. This could happen to you when you install it. So I'm going to show you how to adjust that in a minute. But what this does, the functionality of it, is still pretty neat. And I'll show you. If we're drifting off to the left, this is going to snap your wheel back to the center position. I'm going to shoot it to the right and let go. And this is really going to help you when you're going down the highway with the wind and everything else. It's just extra help to let it keep the coach straight. So let's get this back and I'll show you how to correct for an adjustment that's too far off to the right. Now as far as adjusting the exact center here, if you were able to see the mark on our steering wheel, we were pretty far off, and more than likely it was just because of the lifts, the tires interacting with them, and the way that we lifted in the air. So we just kind of reset the installation. So I loosened up these U-bolts here, brought the steering wheel back to center, and then clamped it down. And it did take a couple of times for us to find center on the steering wheel and on the mark. So that's what we did. From there, we just needed to make minor adjustments, and that's where these adjustment locking nuts at the end of each tie rod will come into play. Okay, we swapped positions so you can see a little bit better. This is going to be the passenger side, and you're viewing it from the front looking towards the back here. So what you would do if the coach is pulling to the right slightly, I'm going to loosen up this jam nut here on the end. And then what we want to do is we want to shorten this gap. We want to bring it closer. So we're going to rotate this clockwise. And I like to use, we can see where the wrench would connect the flat side here and the flat side here. We'll just rotate it one, because it's only pulling a little bit to the right now. What we're doing is we're shortening this up. We're pulling the whole unit in, and then we can go and lock that back down. Same thing with the other side. If it's pulling to the left a little bit, go over to the other side and lengthen it. And those are the small micro adjustments you're going to do. If you're way off, then just come back to the U-bolts and reset your installation. When you're done with that, you'll have to readjust the rubber boot here in the middle. I just kind of grab both sides of the bellows and kind of give it a twist, and it'll straighten out. So we're back in the coach here, and it is biased slightly to the left. And honestly, that may not be the worst thing in the world, because going down the interstates, they are generally sloped off to the right, and more times than not, your coach is wanting to pull to the right a little bit. So this is one of those things where you would just have to get it out on the highway and find out which adjustment is going to be best for you. But if it is pulling a little bit to the left too much, you can always go over to the right side tie rod and shorten it up, and it'll pull the whole system to the right. Same thing with the left. If it's pulling to the left, you need to lengthen it. But I think this will probably work for us. Now, once you get the stabilizer dialed in and the coach is running straight down the road for you, that'll really complete your installation. It's probably a good idea to keep the wrench in your coach for the future if you have to make some more adjustments, or if you get an alignment or something along those lines. Now you know exactly what to do if it's pulling left or to the right. And that'll complete our look at the Roadmaster Exact Center steering stabilizer on our 2015 Ford F-53 chassis.